In the spring of 1945, the Third Reich was collapsing. Berlin was in flames, Hitler was dead, and Allied armies were racing across Germany. But while Soviet tanks rolled into the east and American troops pushed from the west, a very different kind of war was already beginning. The war for the minds who had built the machines that nearly conquered Europe. This is the story of Operation Paperclip. By May of 1945, American intelligence officers were fanning out across a shattered Germany with a single urgent mission. They carried lists, names, photographs, last known locations. These were not war criminals they were hunting, at least not officially. They were rocket engineers, aircraft designers, chemical weapons experts, doctors who had performed experiments on human beings. Men like Wernher von Braun, Arthur Rudolph, Hubertus Strughold, Kurt Diebus, architects of the V-2 rocket, the world's first ballistic missile, a weapon that had rained death on London and Antwerp. The orders came from the top. The Joint Intelligence Objectives Agency, a shadowy unit buried inside the War Department, had been given extraordinary latitude. Find the scientists. Get them before the Soviets do. Bring them to America. And if their records showed membership in the SS, the Nazi Party, or worse, attach a paperclip to their dossier and look the other way. That paperclip became the operation's nickname. Wernher von Braun surrendered to the Americans on May 2, 1945, cycling down a Bavarian mountain road with his arm in a cast, accompanied by a handful of his closest colleagues. Within days, 127 of his top Peenemünde team were in US custody. They brought with them crates of documents, blueprints, and even disassembled V-2 rockets. The haul was so massive it filled entire boxcars. But von Braun and his men had not built those rockets alone. The V-2 program had relied on slave labour from the Dora Mittelbau concentration camp. Prisoners, many of them worked to death in underground tunnels, had assembled the missiles under brutal conditions. Thousands died. Von Braun had personally visited the factory. He had requested additional workers from the SS. These facts were known to American investigators as early as 1946. They were quietly buried. In September 1945, the first group of German scientists arrived in the United States under a program initially called Overcast, quickly renamed Paperclip for security reasons. They were taken to Fort Strong on Long Island, then dispersed. Some to White Sands, New Mexico, others to Wright Field in Ohio, a few to Huntsville, Alabama. Their families followed later. They were given new lives, new homes, and eventually new citizenship. The public knew almost nothing. The press was told only that America had brought over a few specialists to help with rocket research. The truth was far larger. By 1950, more than 700 German and Austrian scientists had been brought to the United States under Paperclip and its sister programs. They included experts in jet propulsion, nerve gases, guided missiles, submarines, and aerospace medicine. At White Sands, von Braun's team began launching captured V-2s almost immediately. The first American-launched rocket lifted off on April 16, 1946. By the early 1950s, their work had evolved into the Redstone missile, the direct ancestor of the rockets that would one day carry Americans to the moon. But the past did not vanish so easily. In 1947, a young Army intelligence officer named Henry Kolb reviewed Arthur Rudolph's file. Rudolph had been the production director at Mittelwerk, the underground factory where Dora prisoners worked. Kolb wrote that Rudolph was 100% Nazi, a dangerous type. The recommendation, deport immediately. Someone higher up wrote approved, then crossed it out and scrawled Paperclip across the page. Rudolph stayed. He would later manage the Saturn V program. Hubertus Strughold, the aviation medicine expert, had overseen experiments at Dachau where prisoners were frozen, depressurized, or forced to drink seawater. After the war, he became the father of American space medicine. The Air Force named an aerospace medical library after him in 1977. The honour was quietly revoked decades later when the full story emerged. The Cold War made all of this possible. By 1947, the Soviet Union had its own German scientists, many taken by force. Stalin was building rockets too. In Washington, the calculus was simple. Better a former Nazi working for us than a former Nazi working for them. Moral compromises were recast as national security necessities. President Truman had actually signed an order explicitly barring anyone who had been a member of the Nazi Party and more than nominally involved in its activities, or an active supporter of Nazism or militarism. The JIOA simply rewrote the scientists' questionnaires, deleting incriminating answers and inserting bland assurances of anti-Nazi sentiment. Immigration officials were told to look the other way. Some voices protested. Albert Einstein, Eleanor Roosevelt, and Jewish organizations demanded transparency. Their letters were filed and ignored. By the late 1950s, the Paperclip scientists were American heroes. Werner von Braun appeared on Walt Disney's television shows, smiling beneath a crew cut, explaining the coming space age to millions of children. He became the public face of NASA. When Apollo 11 lifted off in 1969 on a Saturn V rocket, few watching on television knew that the man who designed it had once designed weapons for Adolf Hitler. The full scope of Paperclip remained classified for decades. Bits and pieces leaked out. In the 1980s, the Justice Department's Office of Special Investigations began looking into war criminals living in the United States. Arthur Rudolph, now retired in California, was confronted with evidence of his role at Mittelwerk. Facing deportation and the loss of his pension, he left voluntarily for Germany in 1984, insisting to the end that he had done nothing wrong. Others lived out their lives undisturbed. Kurt Debus became the first director of the Kennedy Space Center. Walter Schreiber, accused of human experimentation, slipped away to Argentina before investigators could act. Operation Paperclip officially ended in 1957, but its effects echoed for generations. The American rocket program, the foundation of the space race victory, rested on knowledge gained under a regime that murdered millions. The men who built the machines that took humanity to the moon had once built machines meant to destroy cities. History rarely offers clean moral lines. The rockets that carried Armstrong, Aldrin and Collins to the Sea of Tranquility were descendants of the same technology that terrorized London in 1944. The hands that shaped them had once worn different uniforms. In the end, Operation Paperclip forces a difficult question. How much of the future we celebrate was built on a past we refuse to confront? The answer, like the rockets themselves, is still climbing.